Hey everyone, so this video is going to be about akathisia and benzo or antidepressant withdrawal or damage or whatever you call it and getting a diagnosis. So I had someone ask me, how did you get a diagnosis? Because I have been put on disability. I've been on it for almost 2 years, but I did work for the first part of my withdrawal until I was totally unable to anymore, and then it was a nightmare. So I live in Canada. I don't know what it's like where you are, but I think across the board it's pretty common, and it's most people's experience that doctors don't believe you, or they tell you it's anxiety, they tell you it's all in your head, they tell you like drugs can't possibly do this, which is insane because it's right in the patient information leaflet that this can happen. And so what happened to me was I had one doctor who originally put me on my antidepressant for 7 years, so from 2011 to 2018. And he was not the one who did my fast taper because at this point I had moved cities. So my new GP, who I'd had for, I don't know, a year or two at the time, he's the one who tapered me. So, and then he was the one I went back to a couple of months in and said, hey doc, I'm feeling super anxious. I don't know what's going on. He offered me a benzo, which I declined. And so I just suffered through. And then when I called mental health crisis about 6 months after I stopped my antidepressant, they referred me to a psychiatrist, and she again, diagnosed me with OCD, anxiety disorder, depression, and put me back on drugs. So at this point, I wasn't even aware of the withdrawal yet. I hadn't come across forums. I hadn't discovered what was going on with me. So I was like, I had the adverse reaction to that. Then, I suffered. And at this point I had moved cities again because my relationship ended. And then I went to my GP, my new GP at that time, and I said, I think I need to be back on antidepressants. I've got all these intrusive thoughts, all of this anxiety. At this point, I was aware of the withdrawal and I knew that what was happening to people. I had discovered the forums, but I was like, I have symptoms that a lot of people don't have, like all of this mental looping. So, and I didn't have it on antidepressants, but I didn't have it before either. So I was like, I got to go back on. I'm sick of suffering. So that doctor prescribed them. I reinstated, got akathisia. And then I went to so many different doctors. I was always at the walk-in doctor. I was like, I can't sleep, or, my muscles are jerking. And finally one walk-in doctor was like, holy, like she saw me jerking and she's like, I'm getting you into a neurologist right away. And she's like, she was going to prescribe me, because I think I had asked her actually for Lamictal or lamotrigine, and because I had read that it can help calm or stabilize the nervous system. And she's like, I'm not giving you anything until you see a neurologist. So that kind of got the ball rolling. But I had been in and out of walk-in doctors. My own GP was like reinstating me. The psychiatrist I had seen before said, you're mentally ill. I had several doctors at this point, and nobody was really helping me except for this one walk-in who's like, I'm referring you to a neurologist. So, of course it's a wait to see a neurologist. And then one day I was like jerking, and I was just, I forget what my main symptom was at that point because I've had so many. And I said to my mom, I need to go to the doctor. And I don't remember what I was going to ask for or what I was going to talk to them about. It was just a walk-in doctor because my GP at that time, the one who had reinstated me when I got the akathisia, I was just like, I just don't feel comfortable with her. So I go, I'm driving, it's like a Saturday or a Sunday, it was a weekend, and I'm driving to the walk-in clinic, and I get a call from one of my friends who's in distress. This is a withdrawal friend. And so I end up getting out of my car and walking because she needs someone to talk to. And I told her I was on my way to the doctor, but I'm like, it's fine, I'll chat with you, of course. So I end up getting out of the car, we're on video chat, and I'm walking and trying to help her through her crisis. And so then, we hang up and I rush to the walk-in clinic because I'm like, I've got to get there before they close. So I'm the very last patient of the day. And I go and I sit in the waiting room and I'm just waiting. I'm like, oh, it'll just be another doctor who will prescribe me something. So I can't remember. So actually, and let me backtrack a little bit. Before this happened, but after I'd been through the walk-ins several times and seen all these different doctors who was just prescribed different, like I had been given so many different SSRIs and sleeping pills at this point because no one knew how to help me. And I'm waiting to see the neurologist. So in the meantime, before this walk-in clinic day happened, this final walk-in clinic day happened, I had my several visits to the hospital because I was passing out, and I saw internists, I saw different psychiatrists, My mom had called 911 because of my uncontrollable movements. I was thrown in the psych ward. I saw every psychiatrist that was available in my city, and I didn't like any of them. In fact, at one point, one of them was like, if you don't come, because he's like, I'm booking you a bed to come back to the psych ward, because I had left against medical advice that one time. And he's like, if you don't come back to the ward, I have a bed for you. The RCMP, so the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, will be coming to pick you up. And I was like, to hell with that, they are. And then I had to like tell him, I had to minimize what I was going through, because I was like, I don't want to, the psych ward is not the answer. So at this point I was like, I'd been through so many different doctors, so many different drugs, and I was having adverse reactions to everything. And I'm like, this is not the help that I need. So unfortunately, like, I had to minimize what I was going through to prevent being put in the psych ward. But I knew in my gut that it wasn't going to help, because I had already been in the psych ward. I'd already been in the ER several times. I had already been to all these walk-in clinic doctors. Nothing was helping. In fact, I was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So I go back to my story about the walk-in. I talk to my friend. I rush to the clinic. I'm the last patient. I'm sitting in the office waiting, and I'm like, who am I going to see today? And I'm sure they're not going to be able to help me. But I think at that point, I think what my request was going to be, if I can remember correctly, was to be like, I need to see a neurologist stat. I'm not waiting 12 months, because I think the waiting list for a neurologist was 6 to 12 months. I'm like, I can't wait. So this little African man comes in, never seen him before, and I've been to this clinic so many times. He comes and sits down, and I'm like, are you a doctor at this clinic? And he's like, no, actually, I work at a different clinic, but they needed me here today because they were short-staffed or whatever. He's like, I don't even work at this clinic. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, because I've never seen you before. And then I just start bawling. He's like, how can I help you today? And I'm just wailing, like bawling and bawling and bawling. And I'm like, I'm used to, the 5-10 minute visit, especially in the walk-in. It's always quick in, quick out. So I'm expecting, to leave with a prescription for some benzo, some antipsychotic, some sleeping pills, some whatever. He talks to me for an hour. And I'm like, you are the first doctor that has actually sat and listened to my story. I told him my whole story. And he's like, I feel so bad for you. And I said to him, will you please take me on as a patient? Like, I need you as a doctor. I need you. And he's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm not taking new patients. I actually train the new doctors. I mean, my roster is full. And I'm like, please, please. I'm bawling and bawling, like legitimately bawling. I'm not putting on an act. And he's like, okay, call my clinic Monday morning, because this was a weekend. And he said, I'll explain to the receptionist that I'm taking you on or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, right. Like, he's going to remember to do that. Sure enough, I call him Monday, and they knew who I was, and he saw me, and he's like, I am so sorry for what you've been through. And the way he was talking made me think that he knows about these dangers. And I just got that feeling from him, the way he was talking to me. Oh, my lighting is bad. I got to get a ring light. Sorry about the dark. I've got terrible facing windows in this apartment. So he's like, I'm going to help you. And so I was on propranolol at this point, and he's like, I need you to take more propranolol. So I know that sounds like a drug pushing doctor, but I was suffering so much. And so he's like, you need to be on a much higher dose. And so I was like, it's not a psych drug. Okay. I refuse to take any more psych drugs. He's like, I refuse to give you any, which was so nice to hear. So he bumps it up, and it like took away so much of my symptoms. Like, I was like, this is a miracle. And I stayed on it for a couple of months, and I had been on it for a couple of months from psychiatrists, but my dose was way too low. So he bumps my dose way up, like slowly. We titrate up to a fairly high dose, like higher than most people that I talk to. And it like makes me feel so much better. Except I'm getting side effects. Like, I start to feel depressed, and I start to feel like I'm gaining weight, or I was gaining weight. And so I wanted to come off it. And so I came off it, and I feel like I wasn't as bad. The jerking was much less severe. Even though I came off propranolol, I feel like it like did something, or it helped me get through the really severe acute stuff. And then I did feel better, but I was still suffering a lot, especially mentally. He did fast track my neurologist appointment, and I was in there in 2 weeks instead of 12 months. Like, this doctor was amazing and who I needed all along. In fact, if I would have had him originally, I would have never taken an antidepressant in the first place. I am convinced of that. So he gets me in to see the neurologist, and she diagnoses me with benzo withdrawal. I couldn't believe that. She never said like adverse reactions, because that's actually how it started, was the well, it was antidepressant withdrawal, then it was severe adverse reactions of reinstatement, then it was benzo withdrawal. But I was like, okay, I'll take it. And so she's like, I want to do an MRI of your brain. So, and I'm like, okay, but I refuse contrast. Like I will not risk any more reactions to anything, because I know people can react to the contrast. So I get the brain MRI, and she's like, it looks okay. She's like, you have benzo withdrawal. You need to stop taking everything. Like, I don't want you to take supplements. I don't want you to take, she had recommended, like she said, like most supplements you should not be taking, but she did recommend riboflavin, which is I think vitamin B2, if I'm not mistaken, CoQ10, and there was something else, but I wouldn't take them. And so she's like, you know what? These things typically do get better over time, and you're going to be okay. She was right. So my little, I shouldn't say little, that sounds mean. My amazing doctor that I had met in the walk-in clinic, he's amazing. He's still my doctor now. Because I said to him, I am not able to work anymore. Like, I just cannot work. And he witnessed, and so did the neurologist, my involuntary movements and the pulling and stuff like that. And so he said, okay, I will, because I had inquired about getting disability, but at first I went on social assistance because I just needed some type of income. But then disability, you get quite a bit more money. And so I was like, I want to know if I qualify. And he's like, I will do whatever I can, Melissa, to get you on disability. Like, you need help. He's just amazing. So he filled out my forms. I applied. I got approved. And then the neurologist was there to back him up. So I feel like I had diagnosis. He wrote on my form, type 1 diabetes, akathisia, and then involuntary musculoskeletal movement disorder. I guess that could categorize a bunch of different things like dystonia and dyskinesia and stuff like that. So it was kind of an umbrella term, but it's good because they weren't totally sure I don't think they were totally sure what I had. So yeah, that's how I got the diagnosis. I saw countless doctors. Like I said, I went through all the psychiatrists here. I went through psychiatrists in other cities because I did go to get transcranial magnetic stimulation at one point, which was out of town. I saw a psychiatrist there who ran the clinic. And then I saw every walk-in doctor here. I saw my old GP here, my GP in both other cities that I lived in, or I guess there was only one at the time that I went into withdrawal, one city, one GP. And then I came back here, had the old GP, all the walk-in doctors, the new GP. I mean, I was very relentless in my quest to get help because I'm like, this happened to me. It's not my fault. Like, I need help. And I was so broken and just bawling my eyes out. And that's the sad part, is a lot of time the suffering with this is silent. So I think that in that sense, it's hard to get someone to believe you, someone to, not advocate, but to validate what you're going through. But when you're moving uncontrollably, it's visible. So I think I had that to my advantage. I mean, obviously it's not an advantage, but in the case of getting a diagnosis, it was, because you can visibly see it. It was so severe. So yeah, I think that's how I was able to do it. I'm just relentless searching and being very assertive, and I was so fed up. I was like, someone needs to help me. And then also that you could see it. I think that was key, because like I said, a lot of it is silent suffering. And I think that's why so many people get overlooked, gaslit, and worse. So that's how it happened for me. I hope that you're able to get the help that you need, or at least to get the validation. And if you're able to get on disability, I know it's different in every country, but I'm very, very thankful the way it happened for me. And yeah, I think it was also my tenacity that got me there, but I am also very lucky that I was in the right place at the right time. I feel like I was led there. And just that day that I happened to be, I would have gotten to the clinic an hour earlier, but because my friend called me and I was helping her, I was the last patient of the day. And I feel like he spent an hour with me. I feel like that's why. And I wouldn't have been the last patient if my friend wouldn't have called me. So I feel like it was like divinely led. That's how I feel. So that's my story. Sorry again about the dark, bad lighting.